Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session on reconnecting disrupted high school graduates to their post-secondary pathways. My name is Nichole Torpey-Saboe, and I'm the Director of Research at Strada Education Network, and I'm joined by my colleague Elaine Leigh, who is our Postdoctoral Research Fellow. So we have several different studies that we're pulling together here to talk about what we know about reconnecting recent high school graduates. This project came about really last spring as we were just witnessing the dramatic declines in enrollment in post-secondary education, particularly for students from low-income high schools and students of color. So that really prompted us to better understand what was causing students to delay their post-secondary education plans and how could we help them get reconnected. So we are going to share with you a survey that we did of recent high school graduates, some results from that. These were graduates who said that they intended to enroll in post-secondary education, but they decided to delay their plans due to the pandemic. So we're going to see some of the results of that to understand a little bit more about their decision-making process and what they need in terms of support to get reconnected. We're also going to hear directly from some of our students. We have some video clips from interviews that we did with disconnected high school students. And then finally, we're going to talk about what can we do, how can we act in order to support these learners and reconnect them to their education aspirations. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to start with talking about the disruption. And I want to start off with hearing directly from one of the students.
This is how I would put it. It was that one factor, and then it spiraled into a whole bunch of other factors, because during the pandemic, it really just made you sit down and think about this and think about that and think about all these things that were happening around me. And it was just, instead of getting better, it was getting worse.
It definitely took a year off of me going to school. It's going to take me an extra year to get those classes done. It took a huge toll on me, mentally and emotionally.
So we know that all of us experienced this disruption over the past 18 months, but in particular for these students who are at a really critical time in their lives. And this was really borne out by these enrollment declines that we saw. So as I mentioned, declines we saw across the board. They were 4.5 times as large as the pre-pandemic declines that we were seeing. But then in particular, when you look at the differences between school types, when you look at high poverty schools and schools who serve a high percentage of minoritized students, that those declines were even more disruptive. And so this is really an equity issue for us to figure out how to support these students whose lives were most impacted by the pandemic. So one thing that we noticed is that students had made it sometimes quite far along in the process before getting disconnected. Many of them had even applied to college or received acceptance letters, applied for financial aid, and still ended up not enrolling. And this was particularly true for Latino students and Black students, that even when they had received an acceptance letter, for example, you see 38% of these students, Black students who had received an acceptance letter from a college or program, 38% of Black students who decided not to enroll in post-secondary education had actually received an acceptance letter. So we know that there were just a variety of other things that, came into their lives and ended up making it too difficult to enroll, as our students were explaining to us. It wasn't just one factor, it was many factors. So another thing that we found in terms of these equity gaps is that Black and Latino students were more likely to have made changes in their plans. So for example, to have decided to enroll in a less expensive program or to enroll somewhere closer to home compared to what their original plans were due to the pandemic. Overall, when we talk to students and ask them about their biggest reasons for not pursuing additional education, we see that there were many factors, but overall, the largest factor was really that stress and anxiety and uncertainty. That there were just so many things that were changing in their lives, and pursuing education felt like one more thing just too overwhelming with everything that they had to deal with. We also saw that financial pressures were the most important reason for many students as well. And we should note that this is just when we ask students to choose the most important reason, but we also asked them, which of all of these factors was a reason for you to not pursue education. And most students selected many of these factors. It wasn't just one, it was really multiple things that were all kind of compounding one on top of the other. And we did see some equity differences as well in terms of concerns about health risks of attending in person and needing to care for family members. We saw our Black and Latino students were more likely to say that these were factors in not pursuing additional education. So then we asked our students what would they need in terms of support to be able to enroll in the education that they desired. And there were really three themes that came out of these. We asked students to rank all these different supports. So looking at this, what you're seeing is really the ones at the top were the highest ranked among students. And the top one was having an advisor to help them with things like financial aid and choosing classes and a career pathway. And this really came out in the interviews as well that my colleague Elaine is going to speak to, that students really wanted advising that was personalized. Not just information on a website, but really a person that they could talk to about their plans that could help them figure out what choices they had. Another theme we saw was affordability. So many students felt the need to work at the same time and were struggling to think about how they could earn money to support themselves and their families at the same time as going to school. Or also just figuring out financial aid, what kind of scholarships were they available, were available to them, and what options do they have. We also heard a lot about wanting that connection to a career. So students, they were expressing a lot of doubt about whether education would be worth it, and they really wanted to know that they would have a secure career pathway if they pursued education. Those are some of the main themes, and we'll come back to those as well in the interviews and in our discussion of the qualitative aspect of our research. But just a few more slides on this. Again, the equity issues that come through. So we know that students really wanted an advisor to help them, and that COVID-19 made it harder for students to find information. And we also see here that this was particularly true for low-income students. So on all of these questions, you can see that many students said that COVID-19 made it harder for them to find information about options for education after high school, how they could pay for education, how they needed to apply. But this was particularly true for the students who had low income. And also, as I mentioned before, we saw a lot of students really questioning whether education would be worth it. So we see that most students do believe that education would help them get a good job and that they would be successful in education, but only 45% of students agreed that education would be worth the cost. Many were unsure, some disagreed. And really in our conversations, it came down to both worries about the cost and taking out a lot of debt, as well as the return at the end. What kind of jobs would they be able to qualify for if they completed a degree? So we know that those three themes, guidance, affordability, and connection to a career really came out in terms of how to support students. And my colleague Elaine is going to help us dive a little deeper into some of those conversations that we had with students and the nuances of what they shared.
Great. Thanks so much, Nichole. So, as Nichole has overviewed for the larger quantitative survey that we did with high school students, you are going to hear some similar themes from our qualitative interviews. And so from that broader survey, just to come back to it, We had heard that students most often felt excited about their futures, but also, as you can imagine, with the disruption of the pandemic and the uncertainty, a lot of worry and a lot of anxiety. And so we wanted to dig deeper, and we listened to 17 participants who we were able to connect with either online through an online interactive discussion board over a series of days, and 12 students who sat for one-on-one interviews with us to gain deeper insight into what students really were feeling, and also what they felt they needed to reconnect to their original education plans. So we want to go back to listening to students and really letting their voices shine here in how they navigated disruptions from the pandemic. What we found was that students were negotiating a tension between both being disrupted, but also finding a new sense of purpose and agency during the pandemic. So let's listen to one of our participants discuss that, or a couple of them.
I think it was definitely disrupted. I know it was disrupted, but I know the mindset that I have now and the mindset I had in the beginning of the pandemic are like two separate mindsets. I was way like not motivated at all or determined at all to like move forward or go to college or anything like that. But then I realized it's more to the picture than that. Like I can't just be stuck in this whole.
The benefit in not going to a university immediately or not doing that right after high school, it is I have more time to think. I have more time to really give thought to what I want to do in my future. It's a great benefit in this is definitely having that time to really confidently figure something out.
The pandemic, was a time for solitude for me. So it's changed a whole lot of things for me. Changed the way I think about the whole lot of things. I knew that I came to accept that anything is possible. Yeah. You just have to discipline yourself and work towards something.
Yeah. So from those students, what was really interesting was, how they were navigating some of the kind of unseen or unexpected, time to reflect and to think about what really do I want from my education. If it's not going to happen right now as I plan, how do I want to, make sure this all still can align with my goals, and maybe my goals have changed, and students were really going through those thought processes. We also asked students what they needed to move forward, reflecting on the disruptions of the past year and a half or so. And so here's a clip from about 7 different students really discussing different elements of what they need to reconnect around those themes of guidance, finances, and connecting college and career.
It would be nice to actually give students the opportunity to actually explore on themselves and actually make a decision based on oneself.
Be open-minded and listen to the student and what they are considering for their future, but to be considerate of like everything that they share, but to really give them options.
When you have help all the time and you can always ask for help and you're doing something on your own, it's kind of like discouraging when you don't really know what you think you know.
It was so difficult. Like I remember me and all my friends like trying to figure it out, and we were doing it, and like I had to teach them like, oh look, you got this, so you could like move on to the next step. It's stupid. It shouldn't have been that hard. But there was nothing in person, and everything was online. They had no people to like contact these people interested in the classes.
I would actually want someone to just tell me to move on, someone to motivate me, never to relent, never to stop. Someone that could speak courage to me, and also, if possible, assist me financially.
I hopefully not like an unpaid internship because I know that those are hard. But like an internship that would
relate to my field specifically of genetics would be great.
I want to know that I have the security in that school, that if I need extra help, or if that it's certain that this career that I want, I will be able to graduate and get that career.
I want to be able to say, oh, if one career doesn't work out, or something I learned about and it doesn't work out how I wanted to, I still have knowledge about another career, so that I can, not be feeling like I'm stuck in one tunnel.
Yeah, so there, you really hear just a lot of different reflections from students that I think have a lot of implications of what we can do for practice, whether in our K-12 school systems, in our higher ed systems, and for a number of different kinds of practitioners, working with students in live time, trying to figure out how to reconnect more students, as we're facing different enrollment declines. So first, related to college and career guidance, Nichole mentioned this theme in our larger survey, but this really rang true when we were conducting interviews with students. That because of that feeling of just sort of being stranded in the pandemic and not clear on how the different policies for colleges are changing and who to go to for support. In their college process, many students were desiring more personalized college and career guidance. And, there are a lot of systemic reasons why, not every student can have one counselor, a one-to-one ratio that we also need to address. But really kind of the heart of what students are desiring is really for any kind of advisor, mentor, counselor, someone in that space to basically, see that student as an individual with individual passions, and be open-minded to the different paths or careers or ways that they wanted to explore, and basically to not have sort of one size fits all type of advice given to them. And so, implications for that desire for practice, or, in lieu of being able to hire, enough people to provide that one-on-one counseling, there are ways that I think us as practitioners can try to bolster, not only students' capacities for discovering their own learning needs and their values, and, in our school cultures and systems promoting multiple pathways to a post-secondary degree, but also making sure we're investing where we can in near peer models and whole school advising models, where potentially some of the one-on-one attention can be scaled, but at least, students are getting some face time and face-to-face attention with folks who can really listen to what they're trying to do and help them make clear connections between their college goals and career plans. And especially in that transition between high school and college. If this can't be done, year round, there may be, attention that we can put and resources that we can put into that transition time between high school and college. And then students, often gravitated toward and described, wanting to just hear about more diverse pathways to going to college and doing this in different ways. And so the more that they can hear from different mentors, peers, and people's stories, and diverse stories around that, the more they, I think, would value and feel informed about their next steps. And so, removing financial barriers, I think this has been a systemic issue and an ongoing concern for students even prior to the pandemic. And it resonated clearly through our interviews as well, that this was such a stressor for students, college affordability. And what we heard was not only that concern about finances, but this real desire to mitigate risks, right? And to de-risk this process for themselves. And so students were really thinking about not wanting to put themselves or their families into any, undue harm, especially in thinking about student debt and what the trade-offs were with that. And so, realistically, beyond, trying to simplify our financial systems and the complexity of it, one area that we think this has implications for, to alleviate some of the fears for students, is to, try to increase affordability by making it easier for students to be able to learn and work at the same time. So investing in more work-based learning opportunities so that they can explore and get the career training that they're also looking for, and the applied learning that they're looking for as well. Also, this has implications for trying to provide more financial coaching and guidance throughout the college journey, and to make that scholarship and financial aid application process a little less scary. Going back to kind of that personalized college and career guidance, it's incumbent upon, institutions and system leaders and practitioners to continue to try to help students navigate that complexity because of the fear and doubt and concerns that are just even more magnified now. And so finally, kind of the last main theme that we heard from students was that, they were navigating, weighing how they wanted to integrate going to college and transitioning to a future career. And so participants, throughout the study, continued to highly value the pursuit of education and saw it relevant and important to pursue some kind of higher education. But as you heard, students in the videos, they're equally concerned about how relevant their education will be to preparing them for a career, and making sure that they're ready kind of for any career choices that they may have in the future. So, this has implications for how we provide career navigation services and advising services to students, and how we incorporate that into coursework that they might take. It also means, being more intentional about building partnerships with employers and aligning coursework and curricula together to make sure students are getting those in-demand skills that they want. And again, feeling like what they're learning in their classes is going to be applicable. And finally, enhancing academic programs, like I mentioned before, with work-based learning or other skills-based credentialing. And all of these kinds of recommendations, may help respond to students' real desires to pursue education, but to do that in a way that they feel like there's something that will come out of it: being employed, being, feeling valued, feeling successful, and again, being able to pivot and prepare for kind of the changing nature of work, and pivot as they need in their careers later on. So what does this all mean for really, next steps in reconnecting students? I think, taken together, one of the things that most struck us in listening to students and doing this work was just the resilience of current high school students as they've navigated the pandemic, and as they're trying to look forward and be optimistic about their futures. So even beyond enrollment and completion, to really thinking about their eventual success and what they want their lives to look like. So we think we want to give the last word to one of our student participants who really summarizes this feeling, we think, the best here.
I'm just ready for my career, really. Although I'm really interested in education and learning more skills and opportunities, I'm just ready for my success. I feel like I'm prepared for it, and I'm just waiting for the next step. And I feel like I don't need to wait, because I'm stepping into it by going to college, by researching these opportunities.
All right. Thanks so much. We really appreciate you all coming to our session. We encourage you to check out more of our research on our website, or certainly to reach out to Elaine or myself to learn more about this project and any of our other research.
Thank you.